calling down classes for school pictures. At this time, I need Dickerson, Singray, and Seckel to bring their classes down to the Student Center area. Dickerson, Singray, Seckel, come on down.
All right. So I have absolutely no idea when they're going to call us down. So when they call us down, I'll know the same time as you. So we'll just see how it goes. All right. So IXL first. Make sure you're on level L. All right. You're good. Whatever you're on, you're good. Okay. Level L. Next, the other problem that we're seeing, or I'm seeing, is like, for example, we have Q this week is our new one. Make sure to do both. A lot of people are just doing the first one and submitting that, but no matter how many there are, get all of them up to 80 and then submit it at that point. So if you only turned in one, it says it's not graded, and that's why. I put in B and D as zeros, which were the first two, so if you haven't done those yet, make sure to get those done. But for all the new ones, make sure that you're on level L and make sure you do all the parts. All right, if you've been doing that, you can just ignore everything I just said. Sound good? Okay, go ahead and get our writing utensil because we're going to annotate today. This week, we are going to focus on poetry. So you don't have to worry about IXL anymore for now. I just wanted to make sure that we were all good. All right, poetry. So if you like poetry, I'm sorry, we're only going to do it for a week. If you dislike poetry, don't worry, we're only going to do it for a week. Does that make sense? All right, so this week we're going to focus on poetry. We're still going to be dealing with the same standards, obviously. So today we're still going to be working with theme. We're just going to look at it through poetry. All right, so we have 3 pieces of writing we're going to look at. The first 2 are poems. The third one is a short story. All right, so the first one, The Road Not Taken by Robert Frost. Has anybody heard of that one before? Right? Maybe when we read through it, it might sound a little bit more familiar. This is probably my favorite poem. I have it actually hanging in my living room at home, so I really like this one. So first thing I need you to do is I want you to read the poem just silently to yourself and annotate. So anything you find interesting, any words you don't know, or any words that you think are important, annotate. So just read through The Road Not Taken. I'll give you just 2 minutes. It's a pretty short one. Yes. Just one step. I think it did all. Just do all one. So that night was. Oh, that one. Okay. Gotcha. Got that one. So, all right, so what you're gonna do? This 1%. So basically, this box, this box, this box, this box. everybody get it read? All right, I'm gonna go ahead and read it out loud because a lot of times with poetry, it helps to listen to it. All right, so as I'm reading through it, if you think of something else you want to annotate, add to it. All right, so you can continue to annotate. The Road Not Taken by Robert Frost. Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both and be one traveler. Long I stood and looked down one as far as I could to where it bent in the undergrowth. Then took the other, just as fair, and having perhaps the better claim, because it was grassy and wanted wear. Though as though as for that the passing there had warned them really about the same. And both that morning equally lay, and leaves no step had trodden black. Oh, I kept the first for another day, yet knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. I shall be telling this with a sigh, somewhere ages and ages hence. Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. All right, what are some things that you guys annotated here? Words, phrases, anything?
I took the one less traveled and that would know the difference.
Okay, is that the last stanza good? Anybody else have anything?
Stokes, Harrington, and Donegan. Please bring your class to the student center. Stokes, Harrington, Donegan. Please come on down.
All right. Anything else? Yeah.
The one that says, look down as far as I could to where it bent.
Okay, good. All right. So he tried to see as far as it could before he made his choice. All right. And undergrowth is just like when the trees cover it or whatever and you can't see any further. Trees or weeds or grass or whatever. Do you guys know what the word hence means? Somewhere ages and ages hence. It's in the last stanza. I should be telling this with a sigh, somewhere ages and ages hence. What can we tell?
Something kind of like, 1932.
Like in the future?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So it's like in the future, I'm going to look back. Good. All right. One word that I want to point out that's super important to this and kind of ties the meaning is in that fourth stanza. I shall be telling this with a sigh. So everybody go ahead and circle the word sigh for me. So very end of the last stanza, I shall be telling this with a sigh. All right, we're going to go through a few questions to help us think through this poem, and then we're going to talk about the theme. All right, so what does the speaker predict that he, I meant to say, why does the speaker predict that he will tell this with a sigh? When he tells it with a sigh, what is that telling us about what he thinks? If you're thinking back on the past and you take a heavy sigh, how are your feelings? Yeah. Regret. Perfect. Nailed it. All right. So he's regretting his decision. Okay. So when back in the day when he had to make it, you see these two roads, they looked about the same. He's like, I'm going to choose this one. He's like, maybe if I don't like it, I hope to come back. He talks about, even I'm probably not going to be able to. And then he takes the road. He keeps going. He keeps going. He keeps going. Eventually, one day he stops and he's like, you know what? Not a fan. I should have taken the other one. Good. So why do you think it has made all the difference? So we know from the side that he regrets it. So why has that made all the difference? What do you think he thought would happen if he took the other road now?
It would like in a different place.
Good. And how would you think you would have felt? How does he think that other place would be? Yeah, better in some way, more successful, happier life. We don't exactly know what the decision was, but he thinks that looking back, if he would have gone that way, things would have turned out better, one way or the other. Right. And then why do you think it's titled The Road Not Taken instead of The Road Taken? Yeah, like at the time, it's like I'm gonna take this one, but then looking back with regret, he's thinking about the road he didn't take. Very good. All right. So now the theme, the moral of the story, the lesson learned. What can we learn from this poem? What does the author want us to think about specifically from this poem so we can learn a lesson? What does he want us to think about and look at carefully? So we have the two roads, right? So what happens right here that he wants us to think about? Yeah, think about your decisions and choices. Write that down below the poem. Think about your decisions and choices. Super, super important. So, think about your choices.
Eli, Gordon, and Burlingame, come on down. Pictures, Eli, Gordon, Burlingame, come on down.
All right, we good with this one? Okay, go ahead and read and annotate the second one to be of use. All right, we're going to do the same thing where you're going to read, annotate, and then we're going to listen to it, and then we're going to talk a little bit. But go ahead and read, annotate. I'm going to take attendance real quick while you're doing that. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and read through this. In this one, there's probably a few words that maybe don't sound so familiar. So if you find one of them, or a thing, or a phrase, make sure to annotate it. So to be of use, the people I love the best jump into work head first without dowling in the shallows and swim off with sure strokes almost out of sight. They seem to become natives of that element, the black, sleek heads of seals bouncing like half-submerged balls. I love people who harness themselves, an ox to a heavy cart, who pull like water buffalo with massive patience, who strain in the mud and the muck to move things forward, who do what has to be done again and again. I want to be with people who submerge in the task, who go into the fields to harvest and work in a row and pass the bags along, who are not parlor generals and field deserters, but move in a common rhythm when the food must come in or the fire be put out. The work of the world is common as mud. Botched, it smears the hands, crumbles to dust. But the thing worth doing well has a shape that satisfies, clean and evident. Greek amphoras or wine or oil. Hoppy vases that held corn are put in museums, but you know they were made to be used. The pitcher cries for water to carry, and a person for work that is real. All right, first, anything you guys annotated there? Yep. No.
The pitcher cries for water to carry. For one that's
Perfect. Do you know the literary word that goes with the pitcher cries? Anybody remember that, where you give human traits to none? Personification. All right, because the pitcher obviously doesn't cry, but it's saying, the pitcher was made for a purpose and wants to be used for that purpose. Good. Anything else you guys found interesting, didn't know? All right. When they talk about a parlor general, do you guys know what that is? Parlor general? So what's a general? Yeah, they're the boss, right? They lead the war. They make the decisions. All right. Parlor general is somebody who sits in a parlor or a den or a living room with their feet up. And is like, oh, they should have done this when they weren't there helping. All right. You guys heard of a backseat driver?
Yep.
All right. It's like a backseat driver. Like they're not in control. I'm like, oh, I wouldn't have done that. You should have done it this way. Or Monday morning quarterback. You guys heard of that one? Somebody, if you like football, it's somebody that will, sit there and bash the coach who's doing the best they can, even though they have no idea. So a parlor general is somebody that is just sitting there complaining basically about the people who are actually doing things. Okay? And in the last stanza, they talk about two specific things, the Greek amphoras and the hoppy vases. Both of those were made to carry things. Okay? And they're antiques now, so they mentioned they're in the museums. When people go and they look and like, oh, those are so pretty. But that's not what they were made for. They weren't made to look pretty. They were made to be useful. All right, you see how that works? All right. So what do you think the theme of this poem is? What is she saying? What does she want us to learn?
Like it's better to not procrastinate and just jump right into it.
Yeah. So let's say I'm just going to say it's best to work. Be useful. Go out and do the best you can with whatever it is you're given. All right? We're not made to just sit there and be bums, even though we're probably all very good at it. How many of you guys could just sit there and watch Netflix or watch TikTok for hours and hours? Me, I'm really good at it. I think, or play video games or whatever when there's stuff to be done, right? Now, some people have a motor and they're constantly going, and that's what she's getting at. Like, find what it is, be useful, work as hard as you can. Right. We good there? Okay, flip it over to the back. Okay, so this one's obviously a short story. Okay, and we are going to read, and every so often I'm going to stop, and we're gonna kind of think about a few questions about where we're at, and make a prediction. Right? Maya Angelou. Anybody heard of her? Very famous author. Very big into civil rights. You haven't? That's sad. All right. So, one of her quotes here is that my wish for you is that you continue to be who and how you are, to astonish a mean world with your acts of kindness. All right. So, we're going to go ahead and read this together. So follow along.
Okay, picture time for Higley, Baker, and Buckley. Please come on down. Higley, Baker, and Buckley. Come on down, Student Center.
And like I said, I'll stop every so often to talk about a few pieces. All right. In 1903, the late Mrs. Annie Johnson of Arkansas found herself with 2 toddling sons, very little money, a slight ability to read and add simple numbers. To this picture added a disastrous marriage and the birthsome fact that she was African American, or she was a minority. So in 1903, think back. Have you seen in the news, like, it was just 100 years ago that women won the right to vote in this country, right? And so in 1903, this poor woman essentially had no rights. All right, so think of that. Like, by herself, she was in trouble. When she told her husband, Mr. William Johnson, of her dissatisfaction with their marriage, he conceded that he too found it to be less than expected and had been secretly hoping to leave and study religion. He added that he thought God was calling him not only to preach, but to do so in Enid, Oklahoma. He did not tell her that he knew a minister in Enid with whom he could study and who had a friendly, unmarried daughter. They parted amicably, Annie keeping the one-room house and William taking most of the cash to carry himself to Oklahoma. You guys know what amicably means? So good terms, all right? He went his way, she went hers. They both got something. She got the house and the kids. He got a little money, all right? And they're not going to fight over anything. They're good, all right? But so the marriage ended, leaving her with 2 sons. What question does this bring up now? Thinking about her, what problems is she going to face?
Especially because she's black, she's gonna have a real hard time because most people are doing that work in like serious business, like jobs like that won't take her seriously.
Yeah, no one's going to take her seriously. All right? Since she has 2 sons, what is she obviously going to need to do? Work, take care of them, right? So she's got to figure out a way to take care of them. So what do you think is going to happen? What do you think she's going to be able to do or going to do next? No wrong answers. What do you think she's going to do next?
Get a job.
Get a job. All right? So Annie, over 6 feet tall, big bone, decided that she would not go to work. Hello. Let me spray your hands real quick. Trade you things. She would not go to work as a domestic and leave her precious babes to anyone else's care. There was no possibility of being hired at the town's cotton gin or lumber mill, but maybe there was a way to make the 2 factories work for her. All right. So we know she needs to earn money to support herself and her children, but she doesn't want to leave her children with anybody else to take care of. It doesn't sound like she has any family around or anything, so she's the only one. So what questions does this bring up now? Because she kind of has 2 conflicting things going on.
What's she gonna do now? What's she gonna do?
Yeah, how's she going to make money now? All right, because she can't leave her kids to go work for, or she doesn't want to leave her kids. and the two places where most people work aren't going to hire her. All right. So what do you think she's going to do? If you're thinking, I don't know what she's going to do, that's not a bad prediction right now because she's kind of between a rock and a hard place. Right? So here we go. In her words, I looked up the road I was going and back the way I come, and since I wasn't satisfied, I decided to step off the road and cut me a new path. She told herself that she wasn't a fancy cook, but that she could mix groceries well enough to scare hungry away and keep from starving a man. She made her plans meticulously and in secret. What does meticulously mean? Anybody know? So very, very detailed. All right, she was very detailed. She was very specific. She thought this out. One early evening, to see if she was ready, she placed stones in 2 5-gallon pails and carried them 3 miles to the cotton gin. She rested a little and then, discarding some rocks, she walked in the darkness to the sawmill 5 miles further along the dirt road. On her way back to her little house and her baby, she dumped the remaining rocks along the path. That same night, she worked into the early hours boiling chicken and frying ham. She made dough and filled the rolled out pastry with meat. At last, she went to sleep. The next morning, she left her house carrying the meat pies, lard, and iron brazier and coals for a fire. Just before lunch, she appeared in an empty lot behind the cotton gin. As the dinner noon bell rang, she dropped the savors into boiling fat, and the aroma rose and floated over to the workers who spilled out of the gin, covered with white lint, looking like specters. All right, so they've been working hard all day with this cotton, and they got so much over them, they looked like ghosts when they came out. Most workers had brought their lunches of pinto beans and biscuits or crackers, onions, and cans of sardines, but they were tempted by the hot meat pies which Annie ladled out of the fat. She wrapped them in newspapers which soaked up the grease and offered them for sale at a nickel each. Although business was slow those first days, Annie was determined. She balanced her appearances between the 2 hours of activity. So on Monday, if she offered hot fresh pies at the cotton gin and sold the remaining cooled down pies at the lumber mill for 3 cents, then on Tuesday she went first to the lumber mill presenting fresh, just cooked pies in as the lumbermen covered in sawdust emerged from the mill. All right, so something else to think about here. She starts to sell the homemade meat pies to workers at the 2 places. So what does this bring up? What questions? Especially at the beginning. She's selling them, business is slow. What questions does this bring up? Keep in mind her main purpose of her kids. So what can we kind of infer, think about her in this job? Is it going to be enough money? Is that what you said? It could be easy money as long as enough people buy. Yeah, good. All right. So she has a plan. Now she just needs the men to come and keep buying it and buy more of it. And so now we just have to think, is this plan going to work? All right. So you can predict yes or no, and now we're going to see. So for the next few years on balmy spring days.
Would I please have Eichhorst, Lesnowitz, Olson?
That's
Come on
us.
down. Eichhorst, Lesnowitz, Olson.
For the next few years on balmy spring days, blistering summer noons, and cold, wet, and wintry middays, Annie never disappointed her customers who could count on seeing the tall, brown-skinned woman bent over her brazier, carefully turning the meat pies. When she felt certain that the workers had become dependent on her, she built a stall between the 2 hives of industry and let the men run to her for their lunchtime provisions. So the last thing we're going to stop and talk about, she is so successful selling pies that she built a stall between the cotton gin and lumber mill. So what question does this bring up? How is, like, first off, how is this different? How is this different when she builds the stalls and make them come to her?
Should I go back and forth?
Not going back and forth, so less work. How about the money wise?
I'll make a lot of money.
More money, right? Because before, the first day, she was selling them for 5 cents, and the next day it was 3 cents because they were cold. Now it's just all 5 cents, which I know now sounds like nothing, but in 1903, for each meat pie, that was a lot of money. So she's able to make more money. It's easier for her because she's in one place, and the men coming to her are doing more work. Good. So let's see how it works out. She had indeed stepped from the road which seemed to have been chosen for her, and cut herself a brand new path. In years, that stall became a store where customers could buy cheese, meal, syrup, cookies, candy, writing tablets, pickles, canned goods, fresh fruit, soft drinks, coal, oil, and leather soles for worn out shoes. Each of us has the right and the responsibility to assess the roads which lie ahead and those over which we have traveled. And if the future road looms ominous or unpromising and the roads back uninviting, then we need to gather our resolve and, carrying only the necessary baggage, step off that road into another direction. If the new choice is also unpalatable, without embarrassment, we must be ready to change that as well. Any questions over the story? Okay, what do you think the theme is here?
Make your own fate.
Yeah, make your own fate. Perfect. Make your own fate / destiny / just choices in general. All right, so she's saying you're in charge of this. How is this different from Robert Frost, The Road Not Taken?
She did what she wanted. She didn't like regret it.
Yeah, so Frost, you take the path, you just keep following it no matter what. You get to the end, and you're like, man, I should have taken the other path. She's saying you start on the path, and you're like, you know what? I don't like this path anymore. And so you do something, you make a decision, you put in the work to change it. You see how that works? We good there? Okay. So in Canvas, there's an assignment called The Road Not Taken. There's multiple choice questions over each of these stories. You can obviously look at the poems or short stories as much as you needed. And then the last one is based on theme, all right? The standard RL 2.2. So the exact question that they're going to ask you is find a theme that would work for all 3 pieces of writing. So all 3 are similar enough that you can find a common theme. So find a common theme and then use specific examples to prove how that theme works for each piece of writing. So find and tell how the theme works for The Road Not Taken, and then to be of use, and then new directions. You see how that works? All right.